and welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're going to have a quick chat about platforms, and I'm not talking about those stylish shoes that we all wish we were still in. On my layout, I really only have two platforms and or stations that will be featured on the layout. There will be a couple of loading bays, however, really the key focus for an actual passenger train to come to a halt and let passengers on and off will only take interest in two key sections. So, the great news is we have some platforms that we need to put together, and hard to believe, but one of them will be sitting right here. Okay, so what have we got here exactly? Well, the key one we've got here, these are from the Peco catalogue. These are the wheels kits, and what we're going to do is put a series of these in for our main feature. Again, we're focusing on trying to capture this type of platform as seen in this picture by a very popular TV show many of us, I'm sure, have enjoyed. And the second one we've got, which will be basically a station halt or basically a stop where our cricket pitch is going to be. So when it's time for that family picnic day that they're going to be having their game, the requirements will be put out to be running their special steam locomotive down to their country cricket club, be popped away to a siding as they have a day out, and then they'll return back to their station and go home. I went with these kits because I'm mostly after a lot of simplicity. We're going to add a few little tweaks and modifications as we go along, but for the most part, I'll be more than happy to just slap these platforms down. We'll add a little touch of weathering here and there, but that's pretty much it. Nothing too fancy. So let's see what it's all about today. Okay, let's take a look at one of these wheels kits that we've got. You can see obviously I needed either end for the station, and I ordered two straight sections to make it the appropriate length that I needed. Okay, let's take a look at what we've ended up with in the box here. Now, unlike our Hornby type of models, this isn't just going to click together nice and simply. We will need to do a little bit of construction and a little bit of gluing as well. I will point out, while most of the parts have already been pre-cut and ready to go, there is some sections that need to be cut away from a sprue. And most importantly, if we just take these two sheets, which we would literally be bringing together to create our station accordingly, if we just take a bit of a closer look at these two pieces, you will surely be noticing that they have little sections on them where they went. And if we were to bring these together, you can see that it remains pretty transparent, which says to me we're going to need to trim this up or file them back. For those of you that have seen a previous video, I talked highly about these STA3 cutters, or nippers, as some people call them, and I have actually found these to be rather invaluable, because what I'm able to do with these particular cutters is if I come in nice and close, I can just come in with that lovely straight edge on a slight bit of an angle there, and I can just come along and I can just trim those excess pieces of plastic off, and now I'll end up with a nice straight edge to butt them up. The reason why I'm pointing that out is there's actually quite a bit of work we're going to need to do to get all that fitting nicely, including these key sections here where you can see that this is the way it's arrived to me, but that's going to need a little bit of a clean up there. That is quite rough if we look down there. So not to worry, there's a bit of additional prep work I thought we were going to need to go through, so I will get that all in order at the moment. Again, the instructions which are located are pretty basic to say the least, but literally we're going to mount this accordingly, so I may well come up with a little bit of a jig that sits in that ensures I get perfect straight edges on them, and we knock in a series of reinforcements, which, as you can see, the reinforcements are actually here. We're just coming in and filling in the gap. It also gives us an extra place to butt up our paved edging. Well, there are our instructions. We've got some glue, we've got our cutters. We better get to work. Now, I've always said that building model kits is certainly not one of my fortes. The other thing about it is, I'm not going to lie to you, there will be some Hornby and Bachmann Scaledale and pre-done kits appearing on the layout. But to try and achieve some images, I'm just going to have to knuckle down and do it. As you've seen when I did the viaduct, I'm doing a bit of my own engineering, adding an extra piece of reinforcement here as necessary. The way I'm achieving it is just on an old model kit of any description. I would just literally take a couple of sections and glue them down. In this particular one, we actually have some flat stuff, so I thought we might just take that. We don't have to worry about filing it or making it look too trendy. And I do like to try and keep a reasonable cut, so at least when it goes down, it's going to stay quite flat. And as you can see, we've got, for whatever part this was for, a bit of rigidness to it. So really all we're just going to do is squiggle on a little bit of glue in a reasonably kind of straight line the best we can. And then when we put it down, we'll sort of just massage it left and right a little bit. And this should give us some nice torsional strength. And as we flip it around now, we have our platform. We don't have to worry too much about the back, that's why there's an arrow here. I'm only worried about the front, and I need to try and get it kind of accurate for that lip. But before we do that, we shall carry on. I do want to add perhaps a little bit of paint or something to the top of this, so I may do that before we put the steps on. But at least we have the first section, so we'll carry on to the next one now. Okay, so we've just put one of the end ramps on, and if this little piece of plastic looks familiar, you'll remember it from when we were discussing about why these are an invaluable tool to have. I'm no professional with any of this, and I never claim to be. As I said, we'll have some Scaledale pre-done kits coming on, but for the moment, here we are. I've also got a little experiment going on at the moment, just regarding some PVA bonding plastic to plastic and bonding a piece of timber to the plastic. My theory is, and the reason why I'm doing a little test is, obviously this is a PVA and generally it's for a quickset wood type of glue, but I think we'll get some interesting results, because my theory is what I can do is then take a section of pine finishing timber and I could just run a strengthened beam the entire length of the platform to give it that rigidity and support it over the coming years to minimize the sag. But let us flip it around and see what we've ended up with at the moment. Ah yes, baking paper. As always, perfection. But here's what we've got. So we're not doing too bad. I think we may need to extend this section out slightly for the building. I'm not too sure. Either way, that's just a matter of adding another kit. That's why I haven't put the stepping stones down just yet. But once that, because I'd like to maybe just weather this a little bit and give it a little bit more texture. But that's not too bad considering. And we'll just apply a little bit of weight to this just as it's sitting overnight, curing, to give it a nice solid bond. Again, we won't be using soda cans. We don't want to put too much weight down on this, just to keep it looking nice and straight. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the process I'm doing with the platform at the moment. So back to this station at the moment. We've had this drying now for approximately 1 month now. And the reason I did that was we did just use PVA, but we put a very solid bead in and put this rod of timber in at the moment to just reinforce and give it beautiful torsional strength, because we're covering such a large distance. But of course, it was just the typical Willis Peco type platform kit that we've put together, and I think we've ended up okay. Now I do have some very hairline gaps in between where the joins are, and I'm umming and ahhing about using gap filler and thinking actually I'm going to leave it. We'll come back to that later on. These plastic kits can end up looking just a little bit too shiny for my liking. So I did a little bit of experimenting with trying to weather. Remember, here is the picture that we're trying to chase. Of course, wouldn't you know it, Metcalfe do this tremendous brickwork that I could just slap onto the guillotine, trim it up, and attach it. But it is a card, and I can see that not being ideal in the long run. So it's just some bricks. I don't need to achieve the exact type of color thing, but if we can at least just get a definition between the bricks themselves and the mortar in between the joints, I would be happy with that. So then this is where I've ended up with, and I think that doesn't look too bad at all. We have literally, it's just its first thing, there's a bit more work to do to it, but we still get the definition of the stuff going in between, the mortar going in between the bricks, and we still have the bricks, and it's just got a bit of texture and looks a bit weathered and takes that shine off of it. So what did we do to achieve this? Well, it's rather quite simple. We're just taking, for a couple of dollars, one of these kits of kids water paints, and thanks to Marklin of Sweeden, who goes through a quick demonstration in his video, we're just mixing up basically a bit of grey and white. I took a smidge of yellow and a little bit of brown as well, and we literally just brush it onto the plastic. Now don't panic, I know what you're thinking, oh that's not what we want. No, this is water-based paint, don't panic, it's all good. The point is that that's a reasonable type of colour for the mortar that we're trying to chase in this particular application. We're just going to take a little bit of paper towel or any type of towel. You can even use a cotton bud, whatever you like. Just a little dab in some water just to moisten it up. Again, he'll go through the instructions about working in one direction, and I will too. So when we're actually working on the main platform, I'm going to be stroking it down to give it that effect. But just for the demonstration, we're just going to just literally wipe it across here. And the whole idea is you want something pretty tight. So if you're using paper towel, really sort of get it nice and thick and tight as you go along here. So you're really giving it a really nice, good rub or clean. And you can see I'm gonna do this accordingly, going in the right direction. But because it's harder to get into those nooks and crannies, that's where you're gonna get that more realistic detailing. And again, I'm gonna be coming down. Now, if we just have a look at that, compared to our original one on this half here, you can see that we've realistically got something that's looking a lot better. So by the time I've come along with a little bit of weathering powder, maybe a little bit of brake dust or something like that across the lower edges there, and again, we won't worry too much about that till everything's in place and we can sort of judge the heights and just come along with a little brush or cotton bud, Q-tip as some call it, and we can just clean it up from there. But I think that gives a much better result, and for literally just a few cents, it's the way to go. Obviously, if you do have some children, please ask before you take anything. Remember, this is also my toy room and we need some respect to be had. Anyway, we'll get back to it. We're also probably going to apply a similar thing. I'm just going to do a little bit of an experimentation and see what we can come up with to sort of take this out of the platform itself. And I'm thinking I'm going to use more of a black to try this on. Let's have a bit of an experimentation. Okay, so as you saw there, I had a bit of a black. I tried the grey, which we're going to be using on the brickwork on the front of the platform. And then we've just tried a bit of a brown. And in my honest opinion, I'm going to come back to this black. I actually thought I would. It's got nice definition between here at the moment. And of course, thanks to certainly with the diesels and things like that, and the brake dust and the asphalt and other stuff that just comes around over time from a train station, I think this black's just giving a slightly better result. Again, the brown's actually just probably the one that's washed in the most, and the grey's not too bad. So we'll probably just go for a slightly, it'll be more of a grey, sort of a more darker grey than what we're doing on that brickwork. And let's see what we can come up with then. So let us now, after 1 month, I will have to say, in fact, it was more than 1 month. I'd have to say this is close to about 40 to 50 days of drying and curing now. Let's hope we haven't ruined it. And here is our platform. Not too bad at all. Some gaps I understand, but again, that's what this next step we're going to try and deal with. You'll notice on the front here, a couple of arrows. This is the front. and this is the back. And the back is where I have already been experimenting with trying some filler and stuff like that. I'm just not too enthusiastic because then I have to try and recolor it. And also with the back, I try to keep the front as clean as possible, and I don't think it'll be too bad. Again, we might put sleeper or some sort of steel joint that they actually use in current construction of platforms in Australia. Just remember, while we're doing this, we don't have to be too generous about just at the top part here, because we're going to have the step of the platform coming over, so it creates a bit of a tricky spot. Yes, I want to get in and I want to paint it, of course. What I'm saying though is it's very, very hard for people to start to see at this point. But of course, with everything that I'm doing, I know that people are going to squat down to get at eye level, and I really want to draw them into quite a engaging scene with this. So the little things are what it's all about. I just want to quickly mention a great example of that was with my boat ramp that is under construction. I wanted to create that concrete effect where they've poured the slabs for the actual boat ramp itself. And I also put in the little expansion joints. And if that wasn't enough, certainly on boat ramps we have here, they also notch in a couple of grooves for drainage and also to give better traction on the boat ramp. And so once I laid it down in a grey to create a sort of concrete look, as you would expect to see, I then just went back and made it slightly darker, just so I could achieve the effect that as the tide was going out and the water's receding, you've obviously got, when the concrete's in the water, it's going to be a darker color. And of course, as it's exposed and being dried with the sun being out, of course, it's going to go a lighter color. Now, it might not seem like a big difference, but anyone that's watched any of Luke Towan's videos, all of a sudden, the smallest little details that you make along the way become better. But I'm obviously one of these people who, as I see the scene in my head and try and start to create it, if there's something I think I could do better with, I usually will do it so I can come back later. So never be disappointed if you're following a video and saying, oh, it's not as good as someone else could do, because for various reasons, mine in particular, is that until some other parts of the scenery are put in place, you're not going to see it. Now, I make special mention of this now, is that a lot of these projects we see on YouTube and things like that, they're obviously starting and finishing the whole thing. And in a lot of what you're seeing in my layout, I have these videos, part ones, part twos, because I can't get this stage, this platform's not going to be all finished. I haven't even got the building for it. I haven't even got, I'm going to need a bit more black here. Station accessories, from park benches to people, to lamp posts, all the rest. So of course it's not going to be finished. That's why we're just saying the platform in this video. And you'll see what's starting to happen there. I can't seem to get that light grey. Try and get a little bit more white. Hack some out of my paint collection here. Get a little bit lighter. Remember, we're going for mortar here, not the actual concrete per se. Look, yeah, that's a bit better. Be generous with those gaps there, because you're also trying to hit the edges. Now, you've seen me go left and right. I'm just going to jiggle up and down. Again, we just want to make sure we're getting some of this paint into every possible section of that brickwork, just remembering that bricks have horizontal and vertical lines. Now, we were in just a quick general wash like we did, it's going to, being in that water form, it's going to find its own way through the channels and to it. We're just going to do it anyway, particularly because at the end of this, the top part of the platform, again, why you won't see it, the reinforcement for the step on it actually comes 2 bricks deep and sticks out. And that's what I like about the texture. I'm not going to get that with the card. So hence why, of course, you get a few bricks there that end up with a little bit of extra on them that I think breaks it up and gives it that nice patterned effect. And that little bit of a grey line you can see underneath the step part of the platform actually is what will give us to just lay another bit of a colour on it, just to give us some great detail on that. Oh, that's okay. You can see that one's built strong, isn't it? Get some lovely green on our brush. Bring it into this brown. And again, in this application, I'm just going to come along, just really focusing on that top bit. Remember, no one's really going to be looking at this top bit. And in one direction, this one, we're just going to come straight down, give it that kind of effect. Hopefully that camera's giving you a little bit of an idea of what we're getting up to here. Sorry, my hand's constantly getting in the way on this. So as you can see, I'm trying to scoop out what was the white and add it to my black. So we're sort of reversing that shade of grey out here, so you can see that the lighter one with the white, and I'm working my way into the darker one, almost going into this almost asphalt look. Now, I'm being pretty generous with this because, as you can imagine, I've got a lot to cover. Here we go. It's a little bit of a wasteful process since we're just interested in getting paint into the cracks. Let us not get too concerned about the back part over here of the platform, knowing that we actually are going to have a building coming in there. Of course, we do want to do what we can do here. I think the time has come to agree. We're going to need a bigger brush. So here is our lovely filthy water that we've been just washing our bits and pieces up, but waste not, want not. What we're going to do, we've got our steps we still need to cut out for the platform. So what we're going to do here, we're going to take it just with a brush and liberally just brush it onto these. Now that that's been done, we're just going to take the same cloth that we used to do our platform with, and we're just going to gently just wipe it over. So if I just bring one in before we start this, your question is, why on earth did I even bother with the paintbrush? The reason why is, as you can see, in those little gaps where the bricks are laid, that's what's getting in there. Because when we go over it now with the cloth to give it that kind of brown and just take that white kind of sheen off it, we still want to keep it white as a safety thing, of course. But as you can see, now we've covered in that gap. And before I didn't, I just had lots of white lines looking at me. So we're just going to go over and just give them all just a gentle, nice bit of a rub. As you can see, it just takes a little bit off. It's because at the moment, when we do look at it, that really does look quite unrealistic. But don't get me wrong, I have no problems with that at all. My layout isn't about being ultra realistic, as I said. I'm just happy with the Hornby approach. We're just going to do it because with those key things where I'm trying to model from a picture, I'm just trying to give a little bit of character where I can. And I don't think these few little steps are a bad thing. We're not buying anything expensive or going into lots of things. I don't mind even saying that I did do a bit of an experimentation using the Vallejo model wash on this, but that is not for this application. That'll be used with something else. There we go. They all look good. Right to the end, because we haven't trimmed them. We don't know how many we're going to need just yet. You don't have to be too finicky. If you end up with a few drops here that it ends up drying like that, that just adds to a bit of the realism any more than actually where I used a little bit of the extra glue when I was making the joints into where the sections joined up. Where the glue came through, I got a slightly different reaction when we put the wash over, but actually it truthfully looks like the real deal, where someone's come along with a little trowel and just patched up some concrete or what have you. So absolutely magnificent. Ta-da! One completed station platform, and I'm particularly happy with how this turned out. I'm not going to lie, I did actually want to just get the tape and put down the yellow safety line, which again was partly to do with the era I'm doing and partly not to do with the era I'm in. However, I'm not going to do it for the most part, and that's because unlike modern concrete platforms that we see, with this one using this type of pave technique, I'm going to have some issues where it's just not going to look too right. And by the time I've done the 3 layers, remember Luke Towan talks about putting the tape down, putting a base coat down that won't allow it to bleed and look wrong. You'll just get a razor sharp line when the tape comes off. Then laying down a white, and then that'll show up a nice yellow. So I would recommend it, and I would like to do it. Maybe we'll see that somewhere else. But it's not really gonna work with what we've got going on here. Now, if we just cut to this close up now, you will see where we obviously have, where, as I said before, where the glue had come through, and then when we've washed it, it's made these little corrections here and there. But to be fair, and here are a few beauties across that center line. And I don't really think they are too bad at all, because that just really gives the better approach. You'll see that I've actually made it a little bit darker just on the head of the platform here. And the reason why that was done is because the station building would be somewhere in this first quarter, if you like, or third of the station platform. And remember, my line runs predominantly where we're going in this direction. So when our diesels and what have you have sort of stopped, remember it's a smaller country station, so we're only going to load in those first 2 or 3 coaches accordingly. The locomotive's going to stop here so that our wonderful engineers can jump out and go and get their refreshments or go to the toilet or whatever they need to do. And it just seems like this, the little bit of extra muck you're going to see here is where that diesel's going to be sitting and spluttering, and all that wonderful juice will be happening. So that's why it just looks a little more weathered on that section there, and a little bit at the bottom, which again we're going to come back and tidy up. It's quite the contrast to the original sheets that we've put together, I think. Again, here was our original one where we did some different shades. As this actually ended up drying, I don't mind the slightly lighter one I did adding some brown. There's actually some quite excellent detail to be had in there. Of course, we ended up with the darker one. But overall, I'm quite happy. The whole idea was just to take that plastic sheen off of it and just get the gaps in between filled with the appropriate type of grout and mortar with the bricks and all the rest of it. So to give us a really, really great demonstration of this, here's the back side where we were experimenting, but here's our beautiful shiny plastic that we had in that sort of red color. And then if we flip it around, here's what we've got where we've added that little bit of weathering. And I think that looks much, much, much more realistic for what we're going to be doing. Again, where there was a little bit of a serious gap here, I think I'm going to hide it with something. Don't know, it could be a length of conduit going down. It could just be a little bit of a weed that's getting a bit out of control down there. It doesn't really matter. I'm sure we can make that disappear. So that now concludes this video. Thank you so much for joining me on this one today. It has taken a while for it to all come together, but I'm very happy. I did leave a little step here left open because there will be a building somewhere. I've come up with an idea of however that's going to come about, where I'm not too worried if the steps keep going, because I figured a way where we'll put a pot plant or something in there and you'll never know about it. But it's what it's all about. Very happy with this. Stay safe and we'll see you in the next one. Toodles.